Howdy, y'all. Professor Parks back again. Welcome again back to the channel. If you were here earlier for my stellar, see what I did there? Talk on the moon. So yeah, tonight, or this particular stream, is just going to be me sort of rambling. But I have to say that I have to admit a certain amount of frustration, because I was all set to talk about a particular topic, talk about a particular paper, and then I could not replicate my results essentially. So I had looked into the particular this topic of Polaris's distance at home. I had fairly easily found everything that I wanted to find, and then when I came here, I was like, oh, I could easily do that again. Nope, not so much. I just now have gotten to where I've found everything. Hey, Real Cygnus. Howdy. So yeah, I apologize. I'm a bit miffed because that was very, very irritating. Because now I'm just all kinds of discombobulated. All right. Well, let's see if I can pull it around, pull it out, not be irritated for you folks. So. And if I'm too dark, please let me know. I don't like overheads, and so I need to figure out my lighting situation probably sooner rather than later. Let's see. Let's make sure I close that so that I don't accidentally show that to everyone in the universe. So, all right. So where should I start? I invited, so there's a flat earther by the name of Dan the Waterman. I actually had a conversation with Dan some number of months ago, if I remember, which I never do, but if I remember, I'll put the link in the description of this with Dan in the description. So you can go back and check out my conversation with him. And good guy. He is highly suspicious of NASA. He's highly suspicious of, I believe, the government in general. But we had a great conversation, and basically, I kind of got a better perspective on who he was, where he was coming from, that sort of thing. And we kind of touch base back and forth occasionally. Well, he sends me a DM basically out of nowhere. He sends me a DM and basically gives me an invite to a Discord channel by the name of, wait for it, Earth Awakenings, which from my understanding is, and Dan's on there right now, which is a Discord for flat earthers, concave earthers, hollow earthers, any kind of earther you possibly can imagine. They're there, they're discussing things. And he sent me an invite to this place. So I went, I clicked it on, and I went. And it is run by, among others, a gentleman by the name of Geo. And for those of you who may know this gentleman, Austin Wits It Gets It, a YouTuber who is very fond of the electric universe and all that kind of good stuff. I actually did a Sunday Coffee and Science, although I think it was on Monday. I did a Coffee and Science about his or someone told me he had issues with astronomical redshifts. So I addressed those claims. I don't want to say that they came directly from Witsit, but I was told that they did, and I addressed those. So, one of these days I'll actually get to talk to Witsit, like on a stream or what have you. But I'm sidetracking myself. So I got invited to this, and to the server by Dan, and I was asked to join because Geo apparently had some questions that I could address, that he thought I could address. And I was like, okay, sure. So I got on there eventually, and I get into a conversation with them, and I think I'm about to let them know that I'm having a conversation about them. Let's see what happens. But I had a conversation with them, and it was mostly cordial. There were a few people who were testing my patience, but it was good. It was good. And in one of those, yet again, Witsit says it was told to me that somehow distances came up, and I think it was Geo. He asked the question something of the effect of, "What do you think about the change in the distance to Polaris?" And I was like, I don't know what you mean." And he said that Witsit, again, this is third hand or second hand, said that Witsit had claimed that the distance to Polaris, our North Star, had changed fairly recently and apparently significantly. The implication is that essentially, since astronomy can't even get that right, that we shouldn't place any faith in astronomical distance measurements, and in so doing, that will remove one of the stumbling blocks to accepting flat Earth. Because for me, as I explained to them, if the Earth is flat, that means that, maybe I should take this the other way. The universe is vast. Astronomy tells me that the universe is vast. The universe runs on certain laws of physics, certain laws of nature. Those laws of nature then tell me that the Earth has to be a globe. I know for other reasons why the Earth is a sphere, but just the basic physics of it tells me that the Earth needs to be a sphere. And so this claim that these astronomical distances cannot be trusted and shouldn't be and don't mean anything, I think has been a way of sort of combating that. It's like, oh, well, if the stars are local, then it's much more likely that the Earth is flat than a sphere. I'm not a flat earther. I'm not going to really go too far into why this is an argument that they choose to make, why this is a claim that they are making. What I want to address is Polaris and the change in distance. Because honestly, I had never heard of it. I had never heard of this. I had never heard that the distance of Polaris was ever in question. Polaris, for those of you who don't know, is a very prominent star. It is considered the North Star because it essentially is at the North Celestial Pole. Not quite, but close enough for government work. It is not the brightest star. I have met people with that misconception. Polaris is actually kind of midland bright. I think it has an apparent magnitude of two something or other. So there are plenty of stars that are brighter. There are definitely plenty of stars that are dimmer. It's notable because it's right there. It's also kind of notable, but because that some poet somewhere, I can't remember who, I meant to actually look it up before the stream, as steady as the North Star, which in actual fact is not very steady at all, because Polaris is what we call a pulsating variable or a Cepheid variable. So I didn't know about this distance thing. I didn't know that there was a conflict in it. So I was like, oh, all right. Well, I can't speak to that right now, gentlemen, but folks, but I can. Let me look into it, and I'll address it. And so I did. And where really the point that I'm getting at, where I'm going with this, is that one of the reasons I've been asked, why do I engage with people from the flat Earth community or people from the, I guess now the hollow Earth, concave Earth community, is that it's a number of different reasons. The main one is I want to know why they believe the things that they do. Because as someone else pointed out during that conversation, because I asked them, I asked Gio, why do you have this belief? What was it in your experience that led you to the confidence that the Earth is flat? Whereas my experience leads me to the confidence that the Earth is a sphere. Why? And then someone piped in and was like, do you think we choose this? We choose this life because, and he goes off on how they're ostracized, they're called idiots, they're ridiculed. It really is kind of admitting to the world that you believe the Earth is flat is really inviting a whole lot of ridicule upon yourself and going to cause great rifts in your family, so forth, in your relationship. So, yeah. And I kind of reversed it on him. Was like, yeah, that's exactly the question: is why, given all of this, given all of the negativity, all of the backlash that you're going to experience, why? What is it in your life? What is it in your experience that leads you to such a confidence that the Earth is flat and stationary, as opposed to what accepted science tells everyone? Another reason why I do it is because I occasionally learn stuff, which is cool. Learning stuff is always cool. So, when they told me about this difference thing, I did what anyone with a high IQ does, and I maybe I should do. Yeah, I know what I want to do. I want to put this over here. I want to share my screen. I did what everyone with a high IQ does. I Googled it. So I just typed in Polaris. That's a little embarrassing. Oops. I typed in Polaris distance. Got this. And then down here, you got how to find it. You got the Wikipedia article. Apparently, you can find maps to it. But then I got to this: North Star closer to the Earth than thought. Space.com. I was like, oh, well, that's cool. I like Space.com. I often read articles from Space.com. I endorse this. So I endorse Space.com as a good place to learn about science and so forth, astronomy and so forth. So I clicked it, and I read it. I read this paper, and yeah, it basically says that the distance actually changed dramatically. It changed from a previous estimate of about 300 or 434 light years to an estimate of 323 light years. Actually, over here you can see some of the differences, some of the distances that have been found. And just so you know, I switched. I'm going to switch to parsecs instead of light years. And this is where I start to bitch about science communication. One of the problems I have with science communication is that it doesn't communicate right, in the sense that astronomers use the term parsec for distances almost exclusively. We really never use the term light year. The only time we're really ever talking about distances in light years is if we're talking about the phenomenon caused by light. Like, for example, some kind of time lag across an AGN disk. We will talk about that distance in light years because the things that are causing the lag are light related. And that's really hand waving. But we use parsecs almost exclusively. Astronomers use the term parsec, which I know is jargon, but if you use it often enough, it doesn't become jargon anymore. All you really need to know is that a parsec is a measurement of distance that is equivalent to 3.2 or equal to 3.26 light years. The reason why I mention all this is because I'm going to show you my high IQ process. So I go to this and I see, oh my God, they actually, they found a discrepancy in the distance of roughly 100 light years. That's big. That's, particularly in comparison to the fact that it's only roughly 400 light years on average, depending on who you're talking to. And that this article was published in 2012. So not what I would call recent, but it's definitely closer than I had anticipated. Normally things like this, we don't see huge shifts like this in astronomy these days. When we make shifts, they're typically on smaller order. We're on the order of refining things, not drastically changing cosmology aside. Next problem I have with Polaris or with science communication. Science communication really needs to know that error bars are a thing, because error bars are really the core of it, the core of it, the crux of whether or not you should answer the question, or whether answer the question, can I believe this? How much confidence can I give to either one of those values, the 300 or the 400 light year value? I mean, if I go into the literature and I find out that the previous estimate was 323 light years plus or minus 50, and the new one is 330 or 430 plus or minus 25, I'm not going to be that wow, ooh, because I would tell myself we really didn't know what the distance to Polaris was to begin with, and we still kind of don't. So without that, it's really just sensational. It's really just like, oh my God, Polaris somehow moved. No, our understanding of where Polaris was is wrong. And again, without error bars, I, as a layperson, really don't understand, cannot understand the significance of those two numbers. Like, just how significant is this change given our previous knowledge? So I'm like, all right, just read through and I was like, okay. And the thing that space.com usually does, or at least in my experience, is, and one of the reasons why I like them, is they'll link the paper, because they say, the research is detailed in the Astrophysical Journal letters, and they'll link the paper so I can go to the paper and find out what's going on. They didn't do that. And if you missed my little rant at the top of the hour and why I'm a little bit irritated at the moment, when I was at home last night, I was able to use the information from this and quickly get to the paper I wanted. Not so much tonight, for some reason, which kind of adds to this. Because I was like, how am I going to find this? Right? Or how am I going to get this? So what I did was I was like, all right, Turner. David Turner is the principal investigator, and it's published in Astrophysical Journal letters, and it was published, this part is in November of 2012. So what was my next stop? My next stop was to go to NASA Ads. Favorite, one of the greatest websites. That, as an astronomer, as a scientist, Ads is bloody brilliant. So I put in Turner, E, with a little caret, because that means that it's going to sort by papers that he is the first author of. And I'm like, all right, well, I don't know when this was. I know that particular article was 2012. So I'm like, maybe it was published earlier than that. So let's go with 2011 to 2012. And I go through here. I know it's AppJ, which is APJ. I go through here. Really not finding it. I find this, which, if you click on it, just talks about the fact that the period of Polaris seems to be changing, which is interesting upon itself, but doesn't really have anything to do with the distance question. Bottom line, I don't find it. So I then say, all right, how about Polaris? Yeah. All right, I actually need to cheat because I forgot which paper. No. Yep, I actually forgot. Oh, and it continues. I forgot the way that I did this. Ultimately, what I found was I went through this and I found that toward I looking through here, and I actually found a paper from. Oh yeah, I actually had to not use ads. I had to actually put in. I actually Google search Polaris distance astrophysical letters, and I came down here and I found this, which is the precise distance to a precise distance to the nearest Cepheid from Gaia, and that is where I found the paper. There. All right. Enough of my bitching. Enough of my bitching. People really care about that, but that's kind of what the my high IQ research looks like. And well, I'll get there. I'm already rambling. Let's see if I can stop rambling. So I look at this paper, and yeah. So what happened is that what he's comparing, what Turner has done is Turner has found a new distance using a completely different method than the previous, basically accepted method, which was done by the satellite Hipparchus. Now, the satellite Hipparchus uses trigonometric parallax to geometrically find where these objects are. And it has done, and Hipparchus had a catalog of hundreds of thousands, I think it was hundreds of thousands of stars. And it was basically the go-to reference for any kind of, for the distances of any kind of stars that were within 100 parsecs. Because, or so, because the distance, typically, if you get further out, the dimmer the star is, and the larger the error bars to that. So canonically, you don't really trust anything beyond 100 parsecs unless the error bars are convincing enough. So so he's comparing his distance, and so he was looking at he derived a distance completely different from that trigonometric parallax that Hipparchus came up with. Now, why am I going on all of this? What is the reason for all of this? The reason is because I want to illustrate that this is, in my opinion, a very good demonstration of how science is done. Now, Hipparchus computed all these distances, or rather, took all of these measurements, and from those measurements, the Europeans calculated distances to all of these, let's say, hundreds of thousands of stars back in 1997. So you can see that here. That's this reference. And what it's showing is, again, in layman's speak, this is the it found an initial distance of this, which is milliarc seconds, which again has to do with how parallax works. I will be making a video specifically on distance measurement, so hopefully that will make sense later on. But I really don't want to get too bogged down into the weeds here. What I want to point out is that in 1997, it came up with a distance measurement of 7.56 plus or minus 0.48 milliarc seconds. It was 10 years later that a gentleman by the name of Van Leeuwen actually looked at the way that those distances had been previously calculated and realized that they were in error. Because what was happening was that we have multiple ways, in certain cases, we have multiple ways to measure the distances to things, as apparently we do in the case of Polaris. And for a disturbingly large number of stars, the distances that Hipparchus was giving and the distances that people were finding with other methods were discrepant. So something was going on. And then finally, Van Leeuwen in 2007 looked at how the Europeans were analyzing it initially and realized they were off. Basically there was a systematic error in their analysis that they were not taking into account, and he did. And so he recalculated to that the distance now is 7.54 plus or minus 0.11 milliards seconds. Again, the error bar is now much smaller. And really, you can see that the distance really isn't all that discrepant. It goes from 7.56 to 7.54. But like I said, there was this notice that the distances that Hipparchus was giving were incongruent with or inconsistent with other distance measurements. So as good scientists, or as a good scientist, Van Leeuwen said, wait a minute, the method is sound. Trigonometric parallax, the methodology is there. It works. So why are these values so off compared to these other techniques that are also physically valid and rigorous? And so he looked at it and he was able to find this out. Ultimately, what this means is that when we get back to normal units, we find that Hipparchus finds that the distance to Polaris is 133 plus or minus 2 parsecs. Error bar, really small, really good measurement. Fantastic. And now, just to kind of skip away for a moment, that's what Hipparchus found. Now Turner, through his analysis of essentially the light characteristics of Polaris, he found a distance that was 99 plus or minus 2 parsecs. So it was much closer. Turner found it to be much closer using analysis of the star's spectra as opposed to analysis of the star's parallax. Perfectly valid method. It's perfectly valid method. The science is good. Again, the error bar is really tiny. So I was like, wow, this is a little bit odd. Now, what space.com fails to say, what I was told, what was not communicated to me when someone told me, hey, Polaris's distance was wrong, or they found a new distance for it, was that distance that Hipparchus found actually caused a problem. Again, I won't go too into the weeds with this. I will be on science on my next Coffee and Science. I will talk about, or either then or some other time, I will create a topic just about, like I said, distance measurements techniques, specifically Cepheid variables or variable stars. How do we get the distance to a star based on how quickly it's pulsating? But the interesting thing about this is that the Hipparchus distance, the original distance everyone was hanging their hat on, didn't agree with certain other observations that were made about Polaris. So Polaris is a Cepheid variable. It goes through in its lifetime, its internal chemistry is going to change to the point that it's going to pulsate at a regular interval. It's doing so now. As the star evolves, it's going to move into this region of pulsation. It's going to evolve out of this region of pulsation. Then it's going to go back, and then it's go back, and it's going to keep doing that for a couple, 3 times. That distance would seem to indicate that Polaris is on its like 3rd or 4th trip through the pulsation, through that instability strip or that region of pulsation. But its period and basically its light, how bright it is, and other characteristics tell us no. Actually, it should only be going through it first. I mean, it should be just now going into that stage. It's a very small amplitude pulsation, so it's Polaris is not hugely pulsating. That's why it appears really steady in the night sky, because it's because the amplitude of pulsation is so small that you really need a digital camera or some kind of photographic evidence to measure it. But that's the thing, is that first distance was in conflict with other evidence. And that was kind of an open question or a crisis of sorts of, again, we have one measure that indicates to us, that tells us from its distance that that Polaris should be this type of star. But we see from everything else that no, Polaris should be this type of pulsating variable. And leave it at that. That was not communicated to me. All that they communicated to me was that the distance had changed. Well, the distance changed because there was that question. There was that that crisis, as it were. The problem, and so Polaris needed to be looked at again to figure out, to answer that question, to figure out why there was that crisis. Now, there's a problem with Polaris in doing this, particularly in terms of trigonometric parallax. Is excuse me, as our technology gets better, and as our precision for measuring the positions of things in the night sky gets better, which is what you need for measuring trigonometric parallaxes, it begins to limit us in how bright we can see objects. Hey, Jeff, how you doing? Hey, Jeff. Glad you were here. Just kind of expressing my. I'm trying to build a narrative of how science is taught. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe the summary will work better. So where was I? Oh yeah. So kind of irritated for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah, I know. But yeah, where was I going with this? So what I was going with is that the better techniques that we have, the better cameras that we have, and more specifically, the larger telescopes that we use, it actually causes us to lose a region of the sky that seems sort of counterintuitive. James Webb, satellites like James Webb, satellites like Gaia, which replaced Hipparchus, they have what we call a brightness limit. So normally, like with my telescope, with the 32-inch telescope that we have here, we're mostly limited by a faintness limit, to the point that we can only see objects down to a certain brightness because of the size of our telescope. But these telescopes, and James Webb and like I said, Gaia, which is going to become relevant in a moment, they have a brightness limit, meaning that if the star they're looking at is of a certain brightness or brighter, they can't get any good data on it because the camera literally saturates. It's so bright that as soon as the light hits that camera, or light hits that chip, doesn't matter how quickly you shut that exposure off, you have now filled up the entire basically well of light that camera can measure. So what saturation means is you cannot accurately say how much light you have now received. You've only given it a maximum value. An example of that is, another way of looking at that is, think of part of that camera, that pixel where the light gets hit, as a bucket, and it can only hold 65,000 photons. So as soon as you open that thing up, that well, 65,000 photons, and every second, every moment later, it's more photons are trying to get in. But because the bucket only has room for 65,000, that's how much you're going to measure all the time. Doesn't matter how many more hit, it only can measure 65,000. So you can't get an accurate measurement of how much light is actually coming off of that star because your bucket is full. So there's this brightness limit. So now Polaris and many bright stars like it are actually too bright to look at with really high resolution instruments because they're just too bright. So, I think this is why this problem, this sort of crisis with Polaris, took so long to resolve. And initially, when I was going to do this, I was going to just basically go over that bringing up Polaris as a way to say that astronomy cannot be trusted actually is kind of it backfires. Because what it does, what this Turner article has shown, is that it has shown that there was more to the Polaris story, that there were unanswered questions about Polaris, and that now with this new distance measure, this closer distance measure, the star is now, that question is answered. Essentially, when the star is at that distance, it looks like a pulsating variable or Cepheid variable that's just getting into its pulsating region or instability strip, just starting its trip on just starting its phase or lifespan on the instability. I'm losing my words. I can't figure it. I was like, so this actually is a good thing. This is not a bad thing. This is not evidence to not trust astronomers. This is evidence to trust astronomers because we are doing science. We saw something that was still in question, and we went back, took better measurements or different measurements, and was able to answer that question. Now, unfortunately, part of my irritation on this is because I found this out like 5 minutes before I came live. Is I found this, which was in 2018. And basically it flips the script. Gaia, which is Hipparchus on steroids, Gaia uses the same technique, different analysis, but same technique of trigonometric parallax as Hipparchus did. But now Gaia is able to do it for for stars of a certain range in brightness, from Alpha Centauri out to the edge of the Milky Way galaxy. So instead of now knowing only the distances to hundreds of thousands or millions of stars, we now know the distances fairly accurately for hundreds of millions, if not billions, of stars. Well, like I said, Gaia has a brightness problem. Gaia could not look at Polaris because it would just basically bloom out, and you couldn't find a very specific center to Polaris, which is needed if you're going to measure these things. So it just couldn't be done. But somebody was smart enough to say, wait a minute, Polaris is a binary. So what we can do is we can't look at Polaris, but we can look at its buddy, Polaris B, which is 8th magnitude. So Polaris itself, I think is listed here, is, hey, I was right, 2nd magnitude. Really bright. At least naked eye. Polaris B is 8th magnitude, means you can't see it with your naked eye. So they're like, wait a minute, we can look at Polaris B, and if this is a binary, then they're going around each other. They should be basically in the same spot in space. So, and Gaia found a distance of 137.14 parsecs. That, which is essentially in line with Hipparchus. Kind of in line with kind of in line with HST, although I don't really trust that. So now we're kind of back where we started from. Is that they did write a paper, or will be writing a paper, as they claim in here, they claim that this new Gaia measurement, Gaia distance, which is now again more in line with the Hipparchus distance, actually does solve that whole what type of Cepheid is Polaris. But this is an announcement. Now, this is a note. This is not the paper itself, and I can't seem to. And I didn't have time before coming onto the stream to find that paper and to read it and to share that with you folks. So yeah. Point I'm trying to make here is, yes, there was a problem with the distance to Polaris. Apparently, there still may be a problem with the distance to Polaris, but that shouldn't be used as a way to say, oh, astronomers can't be trusted. They don't know what the hell they're doing. They keep flip-flopping on saying one thing and saying another, but then saying another, and all that kind of good stuff. If you actually look into what's happening, if you actually look into what the research is, where the research is going, these flip-flops are motivated by are motivated by questions. We get a distance, we then compare that distance to other characteristics of the star, namely the period of pulsation, how bright it is, things of that nature. And what we're ultimately trying to do is we're trying to get an overall description of the star. And the question became, and then when we got that distance and that from Hipparchus, and then when we got that description from other places, that didn't match. That our description of the star was not consistent given all of that data. So we had to go back, and they did. And they thought they had gotten data that was consistent. Then they went back again, and now we're getting a different answer. But apparently, these folks, Scott Engel and co, Scott Engel et al., I should say, they seem to think that this new distance actually does solve that, makes a more consistent picture of Polaris. So yeah. So this is how science works. This is why science can be trusted, is because we don't throw our hands up and basically say, all right, that's it. That's the number. That's the distance. We're done. We're constantly looking at what do these numbers mean? What do these distances indicate? What do they say about the overall description of whatever it is we're looking at? If we're looking at the distance to a star, what does it tell us about what that star is? If we're looking at the distances to galaxies, what does that tell us about the state of that galaxy now, or how it evolved? We're constantly asking these questions. And when these answers are inconsistent with the answers that other experiments or observations are giving us, then we don't just, again, throw our hands up and basically say, no, you're wrong, I'm right. No, you're wrong, I'm right. We do more experiments. We do more observations to figure it out, that sort of thing. So, yeah. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say on that. So howdy, Chris, Judy, Jeff. Thank you all for being here with me tonight. Again, I do apologize for my mood. I'm that whole not being able to find things and not being as prepared for this live stream as I wanted to kind of got me in a mood. So let me do something real quick. I want to see if I can coax one of these flat earthers to come up onto the screen with me. have it shot. And for you folks, for anyone for you folks, that is the invitation as well. So if you want to come on in and shoot the poop with me, there's the link to do it. So now there was another thing I wanted to go off about. Oh, let me throw this link in somewhere else. So yeah, again, second hand. I really, I know it seems like I'm bad mouthing Austin Whitson and claiming that he is saying things that he may not, in fact, be claiming. But this is what people are telling me that he is doing. The most recent thing is this nonsense. Let's see. I have to wait. I am going to go to Discord here. There it is. Okay, let's pop that baby out. And I think this actually might be a healing moment for our community. Yeah. Oh, sorry to hear that, Chris. Thank you for being here. I hope you get your throat and sinuses get better. Hey, no problem. And yes, thank you for being here for my 2 streams. I very, very much appreciate it. Yeah, whatever. So, good night. So, I was on Blue Marble's server, and I can't remember who posted this. I was just looking at it, so I should have. But somebody on Blue Marble posted the link to this. This is audit.nasa.com. And this is where the healing can truly begin. Is that, for a while, our community, or the community that I paid attention to, we were all, the flat Earth debunkers, just basically talking about, what flat Earth was, kind of arguments they had, that sort of thing. And then, a good number of folks got bored with it. And a good number of folks got bored at laughing at flat earthers. And so they decided to go laugh at auditors or frauditors or whatever, these First Amendment folks. I have no interest in them. I don't know why folks find them to be so much more fascinating than people who think the earth is flat, but I don't know, to each their own. Who am I to king shame? So, why do I think this is going to bring everybody in? Well, this is auditnasa.com. This is a site purportedly created by Whitsitt, possibly others, but it was told to me that Austin Whitsitt is behind this site, and it's asking people to become NASA auditors. Become a NASA auditor today. Is NASA actually going to space? Here's the mission statement. It was NASA audits was founded with the belief that transparency and accountability are fundamental principles to a democratic society. Hear, hear. We believe that the National Aeronautics and Space Administration has a responsibility to be forthcoming and transparent with their information, documents, evidence related to their claims of space exploration. Our team of experts, including scientists, engineers, lawyers, researchers, and independent journalists, or our team of experts includes, sorry, I can read, include scientists, engineers, so forth and so on. We are dedicated to providing courses and information to help hold NASA accountable to the public. Oh, by the way, it does have a chatbot. I have a question. Let's see what happens. Is the Earth flat? So apparently it wants my name and email address in order to answer that question. No, thank you. I think anyone who knows me, you know, if you are of Flat Earth or if you are a NASA auditor, you know how to get in touch with me, obviously, because you're watching my live stream or this video. So yeah, there is a chatbot. Hold on, it's going to ask me for name and email. It doesn't have a straight answer. And apparently I can't ask another one. Oh well. So much for that. So, and then we have our standard commitment to excellence, and of course, merch. In basically a week, you will have the opportunity to buy NASA Audits merch. I can't wait. I don't know about you, but I certainly can't wait. What is involved in a NASA audit? Some audits we perform include employee phone interviews, in-person interviews, First Amendment audits. Basically going to NASA facilities with a camera, walking around until someone tells you, or someone comes up to you and asks you, why do you have a camera? Please stop filming me. And then you say no, and cops show up. Interviewing astronauts. So, all right. So that is what's involved in a NASA audit. What services do they apply? What services does NASA audits provide? This is kind of what I'm interested in here, is the auditing courses. So this website purports to say that they will teach you how to audit, how to do all of this stuff. All right. Is NASA required to be cooperative? Essentially, yes. What can I do to help? Sign up for our newsletter, donate to the cause, purchase courses and merchandise. I'm very interested to know what this course is. A, who teaches it? 2, what are they actually teaching me? Are they teaching me interview skills? Are they teaching me how to dive into the interwebs to find people's home phone numbers? What is it they're actually trying to teach me? Or what can they teach me? The part of this that I found that really tickled my fancy actually was this part here. Say something interesting about your business here. What's something exciting about your business offer? Say it here. Under auditing courses. So obviously this is under construction. Join the mailing list. Join our team. I'm really attach resume. I'm really tempted. I am really tempted to apply. And I don't. And And the reason why I don't apply, the reason why that I don't want to is because I don't agree with them. I don't agree with. I mean, I agree in principle that not NASA, as with any space agency or any government agency, they need to be held accountable. Yes, I fully agree with it. Fully agree with that. But if this is going to be what the like frauditors do, what the First Amendment auditors do, no, thank you. That's not auditing. That's harassment. So my purpose for joining this would be just to kind of point and laugh, mostly point, not laugh, but so it would be disingenuous of me to apply. And considering I'm making this video, there is a possibility someone might see it. Yeah, see, Judy, I'm wondering about that. That's really the ultimate curiosity is, would they accept me? By looking at who I am, if I gave them my CV, would they accept me as a NASA auditor? Because on one hand, I'm an astronomer. I got the in. So, they might look at that as an asset. But on the other hand, I'm an astronomer. I have potentially gotten funding from NASA. So, who knows? But at this point, I think I have enough notoriety. Not much, really at all. But I have enough notoriety that someone somewhere might tell these folks who I am, and I think that would bias this. Thank you, Timmy. Thank you. Appreciate that. Never really thought of myself as funny, but I appreciate that. That makes me feel better. But yeah, that got brought to my attention that this exists. Apparently, there's also a blog. Oh, we have a Dan.
Let me fix my audio. I can't hear you if I'm on. I can't hear it.
I can hear you, but barely.
For controls, edit audio.
How about you folks out there in the interwebs land? Can you, how well are you hearing?
I think I got everything on. I'm not sure why I can't hear you.
Oh, I don't think he can hear me.
Checking settings, audio, default, and I got you now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
I missed your earlier stream. I jumped in here to say hi. I saw you were going through Austin's site, and I haven't gone through it, to pick it apart. I'm glad you did. I briefed through it, and it's new, it's different, and I just want to give you a little background. Like, he's been killing a lot of time on Discord. And I'm like, dude, you need to get off of Discord and try and find, at least on YouTube, you can make super chats, money. And so having very few income opportunities, this is really a form of activism that he can ask us to take part in.
Okay.
And it was definitely my first idea, is like, we need to aggravate people about how their money is being spent, in the case of NASA in particular. Now, prior to Artemis, they hadn't done shit in 60 years. So it was pretty easy to bug them, really, especially after abandoning the shuttle. So I'd like to give him credit a little bit for trying to do something. He doesn't have any product. He doesn't have a book. He doesn't have anything else. And they're easy to pick on. So I think this was probably a good idea, but it is a form of a call to arms to ask the people to help. And maybe it seems disruptive, but I need to just say one thing in all realism.
All right.
The closing speech of Eisenhower when he left office, in 61, he absolutely stated, whether the power was given or taken, that I think the quote was, "Beware of the military-industrial complex,"
Yeah.
and that it had gotten beyond management from a governmental level. It basically is what he was saying. And I think this is a 60-year-old problem that
I think I'm losing you, Dan. Is the problem me or Dan? Folks in the chat, have we lost? Have you lost me, or you have lost Dan?
it's not as far-fetched as you think. It's
All right, let me send him a message on Discord. On remove. Okay, trying to get him back on here. Yes, I can see you.
great.
All
Yes.
right.
So it is pretty goofy looking, but in concept, it's very American.
Sure. I think we lost him again. All right. Before there he is. Maybe I can do this. Before you go on, I don't know if you saw him. I think I pinged you about this. I had the author of this book, Operation Moonglow, give a talk here at George Mason. This is a book about, and the author is Dr. Teasel Muir Harmony. She is the Smithsonian director, or the director of the Smithsonian Apollo exhibit. So all things Apollo, she is the curator for. She wrote this book, and this book is an insight on the political what's the word I'm looking for? Why the politicians got involved with the space race. Essentially, what was in it for them? When I read this, I thought immediately of you. I recommend you pick that up. But what I want to talk about, though, is we've got this site. I want to make sure it is Austin Whitsitt.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And I think it's the first thing he's done where he was really, had any kind of, he doesn't have a physical product except for, maybe the junk merchandise that everyone has.
Right.
But I think this is a way to get people to rally around something. I think that's a big problem for flat earthers in particular. And maybe this is a way to attract other people that aren't into being flat earthers, yet they're still feeling there's something going on.
Yeah, I remember the from our last conversation online, you had mentioned that flat Earth for you is sort of like the billboard for other conspiracies, for looking deeper into government malfeasance. The thing that surprised me about this was that I'm familiar with Austin's stuff for a long time, and his shtick has never been NASA. He's always been about flat Earth. Now he's about the electric universe. So when I saw this, I was surprised that Austin created this. But as it sounds what you're telling me is that he's done this essentially as a money-making scheme on top of potentially recruiting folks.
Yeah.
You're back.
So his shtick had never been.
Yep, shtick had never been NASA. As far as I know, I could be wrong.
Yeah. Oh.
Yep. I'm here. NASA audits.
Okay, I lowered my definition on the camera to increase bandwidth, so it's a good trick. If you need to do that, try that. Maybe I can stick around that way.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I was wondering what your summary of it was. I didn't hear you summarize. I was trying to quickly catch up by hearing little bits of you and watching you go through pages. Because to tell you the truth, I didn't really pay attention to it. I heard someone else was donating to it. So I think people are trying to take a part in something, but flat earthers are desperate to take part in something. We don't have much. So I actually commend them for this.
You don't. Well, hold on. Let's see. Maybe I need to camera. I will lower my definition. Maybe that will help. Oh yeah, I've heard that too, which to me is just laughable because I complain about NASA's budget, but from the opposite side of things. But anyway, where was I going with it? So you wanted to. So what do I think of this?
I'm sure you think it's out there, you know, and it might be, but it was definitely my first reaction was, these are the culprits. I know it's not really true, and but it's only because they've spread it out so much. They've farmed it out so much. It's not just NASA anymore. Ooh, what's that?
He has 3 blog posts. Basically the commissioning of NASA, our commitment to excellence, and our standard at NASA audits. I haven't read this yet, although this looks basically what he had just put on the site. I don't know what to say about this.
I know what you mean about the First Amendment audits. Those guys are kind of a nuisance. I mean,
they're assholes, really.
If you find yourself in that situation, that's a hell of a lot different. If you're a real reporter, that's a lot different.
Yeah.
But if you're going to look for trouble, you can find it pretty easy. And if you think it's glorious to be trespassed from somewhere you didn't belong to begin with and didn't expect to come back, it's not much of an achievement. Their biggest hope is getting mauled or attacked by someone that loses their cool, and then they could sue someone.
Yeah. So my fear is because who are they going to audit? Because in this case, I actually have a vested interest because I have friends who work at NASA. So when it really depends on what they mean by audits, which is why I was very curious to know what these courses were about. Because what are these courses going to tell people to do? Like, are they going to tell them to look up these folks' home addresses and home phone numbers and bother them at home? How are they going to actually go about performing these audits in a legitimate way rather than in a sort of First Amendment auditor or money grubbing sort of way?
Let me stretch it really far. let's say that we are a global community and we do have people in other countries, and we could compare media releases and even budgets. And, so there is some comparing that could be done without digging deep, and just, are the stories the same? You and I know how we both feel about the clickbait headlines.
Yeah.
And, can we control that? You don't see a reason for it. I'm outraged by it. So that's just kind of a difference of opinion. But there is quite a bit of salesmanship involved in the campaigns and outreach of NASA. And I'd be hard pressed. I mean, my gut feeling says that the $58 million a day goes to the United Nations as hush funds, and that the real funding here is generated either behind the scenes through DoD and the NRO, or think about how much money they make commercially. Think about, as an enterprise, I'm sure they make a lot of money, selling product and tours and
merch
through these campaigns.
Sure.
Well, are these campaigns legit? Are they really? How much is spent on frivolous stuff like space hotels that aren't going to happen, and things we don't really need? And
I don't think NASA is planning on spending money on a space hotel. That's going to be completely a completely private venture.
True.
Which actually, on Blue Marble's, I got this site from someone on Blue Marble, and one of the first reactions to it was, why not SpaceX audits? Why is this only limited to NASA? I mean, if we're talking about whether or not we've been to space, whether or not there's been funding, we've been to space and people are telling us the truth, then why are we just limiting it to NASA and not, say, the ESA or SpaceX or what have you? Hey, Blue, if you'd like to come on, I think the link is in the. I think I put the link in your Discord.
Well, you're 100% right. Except that NASA is what people know. It's almost like asking for a Kleenex versus a facial tissue, or playing with a Frisbee for any round disc. Some names stick. I still call the problem of space accountability NASA too, but I feel that they've subbed everything out to privatization at this point. Even Artemis was such a Frankenstein of leftover stuff from years ago. I'm surprised they even used it.
It's funny that you should say that, because it seems to counter the money argument. Because the reason why Artemis is such a hodgepodge is because they don't have the funding to really invest into whole lots of new technology.
That's an excellent point, and you're 100% right. That's why I think some of their funding comes elsewhere. Some of the funding is through private industry and military budget, secret budget, what they call it, black programs.
Yeah.
So I think you're totally right about that.
I mean, SpaceX exists partly because NASA doesn't get the money that they need for massive space exploration. And you're right. I mean, we're seeing it right in front of us that NASA is literally farming out jobs to private sectors. SpaceX is going to be the one supposedly to build the reusable module to get us to the moon and back. So in that sense, you are correct. But
you made a better point. You made a better point. It had to have come up in Congress where they went, no. What did you do with this? What are you doing with that? In other words, most of the auditing had to have happened during the Artemis program. Because they obviously put the brakes on spending during that.
And with the again, I going back to this book, Teasel's book.
Exactly.
What I found to be very interesting in it is I knew that NASA funding was during the Apollo program than it is now. What I didn't know is that it is the largest or the most expensive United States or American project that has ever been built. More than the Hoover Dam, more than the TVA, more than the interstate system combined. At the height of the Apollo program, the budget for NASA was 4% of GDP. Now it's around 0.04% of the GDP. And she mentions at the very end that basically after Nixon, for the life of me, who came in after Nixon, that would be Ford. After Nixon, we won the space race, so there was no need to spend that kind of money anymore. And so hence why NASA basically got defunded, which is where we are now. So I guess it's another way, a long-winded way of saying that, when I hear these claims that NASA is making 58, however many millions of dollars a day, I mean, yes, but we've definitely given them more in the past, and really it's not a huge amount when compared to the GDP of this country.
But they've learned to fund from the side. I have documents on me going back to 1962 talking about the National Reconnaissance Community and the CIA pressuring NASA to put up their weather satellite before the TV satellite because they had already, put in their reconnaissance capabilities into it. And they were saying at the bottom of the document, don't worry about the monies. We'll get paid back. In other words, they had already created the entire satellite. And that was in the outside of NASA's funding. Yeah. And they said, well, don't worry about it. We'll get paid through other stuff, basically they were saying. And they were applying pressure to the agency. I think the agency's slowdown doesn't show the United Launch Alliance alongside of it. And because of funding, because of these fiscal reasons, we don't know of the ULA, with 150 successful missions, with a perfect record. Well, they had enough money to have a perfect record. But they're not, glorified the same way because they don't have the marketing campaign, and there is a lot of marketing here. So,
sure.
On one hand, it'd be fun if they got anything done. On the other hand, you're probably right. Most of that did get done during the Artemis gear up, where they put real brakes on extraordinary spending, and there had to have been reviews of the entire program that were serious and throughout and thorough, top to bottom.
Yeah, essentially the Apollo program from a political standpoint was really a weapon in the arsenal against the Cold War, against the Soviets. And once the Soviets crashed and burned, politicians were no longer really interested in funding NASA to that point, which is why we didn't really go back to the moon. We did do the whole shuttle thing, which most people seem to have forgotten about. But I kind of want to go back to the whole NASA audits thing. Let me ask you this. So I don't know if you heard me talking about this, but I was like, should I apply? Because they say that their mission is to demand transparency and accountability for NASA. I fully agree that any government agency should be transparent and held accountable for their actions. I'm curious whether or not, if I apply, if I send them my CV, would they accept me?
I think you have to do it just to see. Yeah, that'd be exciting just to know what happens.
Yeah.
Of course, this is going to see what sticks to see if this is around next year anyway,
So you basically think this is just a, throwing spaghetti at the wall to find out what sticks?
I think it's non-interfering with anything that he's doing to begin with. It doesn't require a shitload of labor anymore once he does this. He does some little online things, maybe shows up somewhere, for a meeting, someone, a conference at times. But most importantly, I know he's giving people a way to support his efforts one way or another. This is a guy that toured the whole country,
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah.
did not promote it well or get a lot of support.
Well,
And
he also made the unfortunate decision of teaming up with Nathan Thompson. But well,
you said his name.
Yes, if I say it 2 more times in the mirror, he will appear. But when you say that there's not going to be a whole lot of upkeep, I don't know. The main thing I'm looking at is the auditing courses. He's got to come up with, because you can purchase them. Of course, it doesn't show me. I don't know where you can purchase them. I guess he hasn't built that yet, but you can apparently purchase these auditing courses, and someone will teach you how to conduct a NASA audit. That's a lot of upkeep. I mean, not only do you have to produce them, but you have to keep track of who should get them. Honestly, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering whether or not there's a lot of potential for fraud is where I'm really getting into. Mm-hmm. Is if folks donate, if folks buy courses, how are these folks going to know that money is actually going to go towards NASA auditing rather than just,
I mean, that's certainly, the case with any donated monies to any cause.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But in reality, we have a tough time finding any way to rally around or take action in any way. So I think this is a call to action.
Okay.
Even if they sign up and do nothing, we have a hard time getting anyone to mobilize. So if he's practicing at mobilizing, again, power to him.
But when you say mobilizing, do you really think that that Austin's going to take this money and create conferences and use it to do conferences, use it to make tours or speaking series or really anything other than just hanging out on Discord and selling merch? Like, that's where I'm wondering is, you say that I understand that you think that Flat Earth needs a larger platform, needs a more aggressive sort of messaging system, I guess. But do you really think this is it? That this is going to do it?
This is different.
Okay.
Therefore, it has value because it's out there to see if it works or not. I do street activism, and it's almost impossible for me to get people to show up.
Mm.
So if he got 8 people to go to SpaceX on, what do you call it, open house, because they allowed 35 people for the public and we overran it with requests, it'd be fun, be exciting. I've got that within an hour drive of me, and also JPL within an hour drive of me. So I feel an obligation to find at least when their open house is and what they do allow people to do. I spoke to someone else that went down to Tesla. To SpaceX. There was some railroad tracks nearby, and he was poking around and bothered some guy who was outside having a smoke. And it turns out they were having some problem indoors, and almost everyone got escorted outside to the parking lot areas. And he was badgering people, and he made himself unwelcome very quickly. So the idea is not to make yourself unwelcome. That's for sure. And the courses, I think he could, if they're on, if their course is basically charting as to how to do auditing, hopefully they don't include, badgering and guidelines to stay within your bounds and to look for an opening instead of trying to wedge your way in. Like picnics,
Yeah.
company events, things like that, where we might be actually welcome. Badgering people's not a good idea. I have a hard time telling everyone that about, like, when you come around, because they want to take everything, all their frustrations on the first person they see of that's having any credential, authority,
Yeah.
or word or something to say.
Yeah.
And you're so much more valuable than that. In our case, we're having a hard time speaking to professionals at any level and getting near academia. Um, so
Yeah, what I find to be interesting, you were saying that when you do street activism, and you're saying that it's a hard time to get you people out to actually,
enforce.
promote the movement, I guess.
Yeah.
Why? Like, 'cause
Okay.
when I look at these Discord servers, when I look at Discord communities, they seem to be, there's a wealth of people, and they are certainly not held back as to what their opinions.
No, but there's no more than 200 of those people, and this is so separate from them. This is him getting the fuck off of Discord. He wastes so much time on Discord. He's honed his skills and he's bounced some stuff, but it's mostly the same stuff over and over again,
Yeah.
And it's like, for you, when you come around, I'd like to limit it to 2 hours, because in the third hour, people come around that didn't hear what you said before. And
Yeah.
you get into a cycle of, why this? And you're like, I already said that. I already said I questioned, so just the sheer length of time you spend there, it starts to get redundant. And this is a method for him to get off of there and onto something else. If he does, let's say, once a month, a seminar and Q&A regarding the courses, which are all prepackaged, it won't cost him a lot of effort. This is low dollar, low investment, low effort. Now, is there high return? I don't know. What are we going to do? Write a letter? I'm not sure. You're right. What are we going to do when we find a problem? He has gone through FOIA and, gotten a couple of documents. Jaron had done that, gotten videos. They're expensive. They make it a little difficult. What are we going to prove? Maybe the green screen stuff, maybe that stuff is often prepared.
Okay.
And of course, as part of the campaign, who gives a shit, right? It's like a commercial. Or how they present food in commercials. It's really white glue because the frosting would run off, things like this. So congratulations to NASA for performing the Artemis mission. Congratulations to NASA if they can prove their value, in the future.
Yeah.
I think this is a way to see who would join any cause. And I think this was the quickest, easiest, and strongest opposition he could find, a cause, So logically, this is good. Logically, it's like, well, he's going to get the hell off of Discord and spend some more time on other things. This is just one of the other things.
But do you think that's actually going to happen? Because when I look at this, really what I'm looking at is, what I fear is going to happen is that people are just going to go down here, hit ye old donate money or a donate button, give him money, and really not open this thing up at all, not do anything up with this at all, and really just take people's money. So that's my fear. And I'm also wondering, is there anyone else involved in this, or is it just Austin?
Those are excellent questions. It could be the case. It could end up being the case. No one deserves the money more than him. About the amount of time that I've seen him give back, and he's relatively calm. He speaks quickly and deliberately, but he represents better than anyone I know. His depth is probably double of almost anyone else.
In my my frank opinion of Austin is that yes, he is very well spoken. He speaks very, very quickly. I think honestly that's a tactic. I think it's a very good tactic, but I think that's a tactic to prevent people from a truly understanding or being able to or internalize what he's actually saying, and two, to actually interrupt him in any way. Uh, but I have to say, the stuff he's been talking about, particularly with the electric universe, it's clear to me that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't understand electromechanics. He does, or electrodynamics, electrostatics rather, magnetism. You know, I had that very brief conversation with him. I don't know if you were there, but I had a very brief conversation with him on that Discord maybe a week ago or so. And then he was going off about how all these distance estimates were wrong and the cosmological crisis. And I kept telling him, you know, your understanding is inaccurate. What you understand is not what you are saying is true. So, yes, I guess to TLDR is yes, I agree that Austin is very well spoken and he's very good at what he does. My problem with him is that I don't think he truly knows what he's talking about, at least at the level that he is presenting himself to know what he is talking about, if that makes any sense.
Well, when we first saw him, he was decoding Ken Wheeler, since
Yes.
no one can understand Ken Wheeler, and at the the way he speaks and the brevity in which he moves on.
Okay, actually, it's very good. If you there's a friend of mine goes by AB Science on YouTube. He dissected. He is now a PhD physicist. His thesis or his dissertation was on magnetism. He told me what it was, but I've forgotten. But he is basically an expert in magnetism. He did an entire series dissecting Ken Wheeler's videos, and I can tell you, Ken Wheeler it's word salad. It doesn't mean anything. Tell you. So, the fact that Austin is dissecting it kind of goes to my point of he doesn't know what he's talking about, because if he knew what he was talking about, he'd realize that Ken Wheeler is so full of shit. His eyes are brown.
So lucky that I've heard him talk at all, because I think he talks about discrepancies within unification theories more than anything. I don't hear him. We're talking about theories, we're talking about things going forward. And I have, he's way beyond me in his comprehension of how things might work, and the citation of what physicists and theoretical scientists are looking into, particularly the ether, which has been an argument for what, 150, 200 years.
Thereabouts, yeah.
Or more. I mean, I don't know. Actually, he says it goes all the way back to the 1600s. But
yeah. So I think at that point you were talking about there is the term ether, but it has been used to mean different things over at different times. For example, Aristotle was actually the one, as far as I know, who coined the term ether, and he referred to ether as the fifth element. So you had fire, you had earth, you had water, you had all the avatar elements, and then you had ether. And the reason why the sun and the moons and the planets were all made of ether is because those objects didn't move with the same prescription that he applied to everything else on the earth. So ether has been around. The term ether has been around forever, since Aristotle. So yeah.
Also, the other area you'll see Austin go is into Christianity and Bible and Torah and such. So this is probably a branch of where Austin's going to go with his time and effort, and see who he can gather, see what suckers he could gather over there too. Now, I'm going to say suckers, because if you just click donate and get nothing out of it, we could call them that. But I will tell you that the people that sent him monies, super chats, didn't expect anything back. They were rewarding him for his effort to begin with and for representing them. Going back to Discord, it's a weak sliver of humanity. It's not, they're online people who are there to fight and play, fight or play. You know, it's not, you know, nothing's getting done there, and it's an internet world. It's not real world. Austin deserves a ton of credit for entering the real world. You know, so that's a big difference than most of us, you know, that don't go in the street, don't show their face, don't use their real name, and don't try and represent, boy, any cause or anything that he may or may not care about. You know, so give him a little credit for having guts, and I'm trying to keep him away from you because he's going to want to rip you to pieces, and I think you're so much more valuable to us, because we need more people in at your level of not just prestige, but more importantly, personally, you're willing to discuss things, you're willing to question things, you're willing to hypothesize and put up with people lined up next, because you're used to standing up when people asking questions. So you're very unique. You're not constrained by your employer, which is unique.
Yeah, so far so good. I don't believe they are aware of my YouTube channel. Department chair is aware of my YouTube channel. I don't know if he's ever watched anything on it, but he is aware of it. In terms of keeping me away from Austin, please don't. Actually, I welcome the chances to talk to Austin.
Okay, all right, that's good. I just don't want him or anyone else to think they're going to settle it right then and there with you, because I think you have more value than that. And what we consider a success is scaring someone off and going, oh, look, he rage quit. He wouldn't listen. Well, really, you were all lining up and bouncing them around like bullies in an alleyway. Yeah. And it's not, it becomes tiring in hour 3, and you can't keep up with another round of another guy thinking he's smart. You know,
the thing with Austin is I've seen him outside of, say, Discord, or when I've seen him on YouTube videos or what have you, it's always in a debate setting. And what I would like to do is I would just like to have a conversation with the man, figure out, why he believes the things that he does, and he can present his argument, because I know that he is very definitive about cosmology. He is very definitive about astronomy in general, in such a way that he's just wrong. In certain things that he says, he's wrong. And I would love to have a conversation with him to explain to him how he is wrong, essentially. And I don't want to try to convince him that the Earth is round. I never try to convince anyone that the Earth is round. I just want people to know what science says, because I don't want people going out there and misrepresenting what's the current science says. And I find that's what he's been doing.
I think he's smart enough to learn from you. I mean, it was fun to hear you talk with us the other day as we brought up subjects in your field you weren't aware of yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not out of range for us to teach you, and that's amazing in itself.
Yeah, I opened this stream by saying by explaining why I do things, and one of the reasons why I engage with Flat Earth is I learn stuff, and I like learning stuff, like the Polaris thing, the fact that the distance has changed fairly recently, and I looked into that, and apparently I still need to look into that, because
what a funny source to have it come out of us,
Yeah. So
but that's part of your outreach. In other words, your outreach is working. If it's bringing data back to you, your outreach is working. So if we give money to you in outreach, are we expecting physical return for us, or just supporting you?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. I know that I have 2 patrons. From a practical standpoint, I know I have 2 patrons. As I haven't checked to see if anyone has joined me, has been donating to me recently, but as I explicitly state every time I shill it, I guess, is that all of that money goes to our observatory and our tour guide, paying our tour guides and things of that nature. So if someone wants to see where that money would go, I'm very willing to show them. And actually, one of the things I want to be able to do is to do a stream where I show our guides out in the world, teaching kids about astronomy. So yeah, that's why I do plan on showing people, the fruits of their labor, as it were.
Well, not only that, you reached out to me. So your outreach program went above and beyond what anyone would expect.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I just like I said, I want to. I'm very curious about the flat Earth, as you know. I'm very curious to know. I would really love to talk to Gio to find out exactly what life experiences he has that have led him to believe, led him to the conclusion rather that the Earth is flat. And with Austin, the same thing. It's just, like I said, the problem I have with Austin and this whole thing, getting back to the Austin or the audits thing, is, I'm afraid it's just going to be it's going to be a dodge. It's going to just be a way to take money out of the hands of people who really shouldn't be taken advantage of. And I think he misrepresents things.
Definitely different than whatever he's doing with this NASA audits thing. So you got two things going on with him, really, in that case. One is conversing and going over differences, and the other would be, what the hell are you doing with this? You rabble rouser. Wonder where he is right now. You don't want to bring him on now if I find him, do you?
If you find him and he's willing to come on now, I would love to have him on.
He's not listening. He's got his audio off. He's got a young baby right now.
Yeah, I heard about that.
So, what would you do to, if you were Mr. Terrific Flat Earther, what would you do to try and figure out a way to make money? In other words, they've tried to do an online conference, him and Jaron, something they called True Earth, as a way to attract people. The big thing now is to attract people that don't get tagged as flat earthers. It's so ugly to be tagged as a flat earther.
Mm-hmm.
And to be limited as such, actually.
I mean, I guess my question then would be, why does this need to be because it sounds to me like you're saying that this should be a career, that people should make money doing this. Shouldn't they just be doing this out of their own pocket? I mean, obviously I have no problem with asking for donations, but
until it becomes 24/7, Jaron, when he had a new baby a few years ago, realized that if he could get just $2 out of the same people he was getting $1 out of, that he could go from $1,500 a month to $3,000 a month and no longer have to try and get a job. More importantly, to have his wife be able to be at home and have her not out delivering foods and whatever, Uber driving, so.
1 second. Timbo Turtle, I think, was trying to connect but can't anymore. So Timbo, if you're out there, let me know and I'll fix that. But so you're saying that Jaron was basically saying, if I can make more money out of it, I'm making money on this. If I can make more money on this, then my wife doesn't have to work.
And not so much that, but he wouldn't have to work. And he was putting in the work. That particular guy is a journalist, and he's done good.
I didn't realize that was his background.
It's not his background; it's his specialty. Okay. He's done good as that, and he hasn't. He's not a scientist, and he's not a political activist. He doesn't go out in the streets up.
Oh,
him and David Weiss are the only people making money. You know, the only people with any method of making any money.
Nodell isn't making any money?
Who?
Nodell, Bob Nodell?
Well, I'd like to have Bob Nodell fade away.
I forgot that.
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about him. FE Core finally admitted they're dead after 3 years of me saying so.
Okay.
So I'm real happy that we don't have this carrot to follow that was never really worth following. And so we still have nothing that's ours, flat earthers, you know, and now everyone's running from the word. So
yeah,
the fact that Austin found something to do, I do give him credit.
True. Hold on a second. So Timbo, it's telling me that you need to connect your mic cam before I can add you to the stream. So again, if you're here, see if you can connect your mic and camera.
And then once he's in, he still needs to check the settings. Yeah. Once he's in, at the bottom of the screen here.
I get what you're saying about the people who don't want flat Earth. They don't want to be associated with flat Earth or what have you.
But that's a lack of community. We just don't have anything that is flat Earth, and except fighting with each other or fighting with people. You know,
and you also have folks like Bev who love to say that flat Earth is a psyop, and will go out of their way to not say that the Earth is flat, which is, I just recently heard a snippet where he was like, "Have you measured the of the Earth?" When it was clear what he wanted to say was flatness, but he couldn't bring himself to say flatness.
He won't. Yeah.
Yeah. It was ridiculous. But
now you do. There's a lot of people that have been around on the globe side that have been around flat Earth debate for 6 years or so. You're dabbling there, coming into the next 6 years.
Well, I've been around. I've been on the outskirts, like in comment sections and so forth, since 2018.
So there is a fascination that flat earthers, as they're busy running. Hi, Tim. As people are busy running from flat Earth, the name, I'm not going to, because people want to talk to flat earthers, and they don't care about flat Earth, and neither do a lot of flat earthers. You know, it's particularly in this case, you see Austin, it's branching out, you know. So audit everything would be a great idea, but that narrowing it down to NASA might help. Getting anyone to go and do anything is pretty cool. To get them to get off their ass, whether they're giving money or showing up to do something. But a show of force is a show of force. I don't know if you know, I wear a lab coat in public, yes, and it draws attention. Sure. A lot of people want to tell me I'm a piece of crap for doing that. That how dare I assume that I could do that? Well, we're in a psychological battle. And if it's not a psychological battle, then they're going to say it's a battle of good and evil. But either way, we're in a battle up against grain. We are going against the grain, and we are strange people for doing so. Mm-hmm. And it's not a comfortable position. So when people come up and want to say, "Hey, what are you talking about?" It's a huge opportunity for us. You give me a great opportunity to talk about other things. You know, I'm not an expert on these things, and I can only speak from the heart and from logic. I'm not well schooled either, you know.
Yeah, and and this is kind of where you're talking about moving forward, and you're saying that Austin, it's good on Austin for getting this up and basically trying to make something for flat Earth, so that flat Earth can rally. And you seem to be. You are a true believer. You really are invested in this cause emotionally. You want this. You have your reasons for wanting the greater public to know what you have to say. But fortunate or not, when I think of Austin, I think of Nathan Thompson. Nathan Thompson was a grifter. Like he was, well, among other things, Nathan Thompson was a grifter. Like his point or his his primary motivation was not flat Earth. It was Nathan Thompson. It was putting money in his pocket. It didn't matter, and he would do whatever it needed to get done to take money, to put money in his pocket, including stealing from Austin, from my understanding. I don't know too much about that when they, fell apart or what have you. So
he was just using the income to maintain his lifestyle. And when it came time to working on the vehicles and such, he wasn't that interested in contributing his portions.
Yeah. Again, it was all about Nathan rather than all about the tour. So Nathan or Austin has put this website together. I am going to be very interested to know what comes of this, where it goes. I mean, you say that this is going to make something for Flat Earth, but do you know of any others that are basically going to rally behind? Do you know of other people who are planning on donating, rallying behind this, maybe designing some of these courses, anything like that?
No, but I think that he's starting with the Flat Earth audience. I think he can attract another audience this way. So it's really, he's moving away from Flat Earth, in all honesty. And at some point, he'd like to use his skills and his knowledge to get into good conversations, possibly like the ones with yourself, where maybe he'll learn something, and maybe he'll be able to go forward without providing embarrassment, as most Flat Earthers do provide as much embarrassment or more embarrassment than knowledge. Really, we tend to act out a great deal. We're very unusual people going against the grain. It's an unusual task. It's not bright. It's not smart to say, hey, why don't you go against everything? It's like, well, it's not everything. I'd like to know it's not everything, but it's a propensity to do so. It's a once you start questioning stuff and take that attitude, you can be relentless and eventually, as you may know, biased, and start cherry picking and doing things backwards, researching backwards. We thought this, and then we looked and we found it. It's like, did you look at everything else?
Yeah, basically pulling an art, looking for the quasars that fit his concept and stopping there.
If we could figure out how to get into real conversations, I don't know if we'll ever be respected, but throwing our emotions about hasn't been the best plan. No,
I don't think that's, as I've often said, you're never going to insult someone into agreeing with you. So yeah, I think that if folks want to actually convince, if flat earthers really want to convince, I think I might have seen Tim speak.
He's getting closer.
Oh, no, I'm just listening. If you can say, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi.
Yeah. No, just listening. G'day, guys. Sorry.
Oh, no. Sorry, Tim. I think I've seen you around, but I don't think I've
working. Yeah. No, my camera's not working, so yeah. Don't worry. And you never really see my face on screen anyway, so that's not a problem to me.
It's all right.
Usually see my turtle avatar floating around.
So let's give Austin a little credit initially for trying to translate Ken Wheeler, right, wrong, or indifferent, for marching about and showing his face, for getting rid of Nathan Thompson. He was in shock the entire rest of the tour. To be honest, I tried to get him, to meet up with other flat earthers, and he kind of went out as a lone nut, which is really what I didn't want to see. I wanted to see big groups wherever he was. Mm-hmm. And he did not communicate with people in that respect because he was still really shell-shocked about the Nathan Thompson thing for most of that tour.
Do you think he communicates with people now? Do you think that he collaborates with other flat earth creators, assuming there are too many of them? You seem to indicate that there really aren't a lot of flat earth creators anymore, but does he collaborate with folks?
He's been spending huge amounts of time, 12 hours plus, on Discord, on more than one channel, and he convinced me that he's a real person and all that. Yeah. I was questioning his motives back then, And to be honest, I'm blocked on his channel, on his YouTube channel. So the people that he spends time with are against me having a voice in the flat
Wait,
Earth community.
he one. I didn't realize he still had a YouTube channel, and he's blocked you.
His moderators have.
Okay.
Um,
So
Same thing with Jaron. Same thing with Karen B. Same thing with David Weiss. And Bob Nodell has gone out of his way to make sure that I've been removed anywhere that he could.
okay.
So I don't have as many friends there as you might think. And I've had to only through Discord interact with Witsit enough to know that he's a human being, and that he isn't powering forward blindly.
Well, my question then to you is, why have you asked what's it to unblock you, or have his moderators unblock you on his YouTube channel?
Something happens when people get busy.
Okay.
When I met him in person the first time, I said, "What the fuck? You have me blocked on Facebook?"
Mm-hmm.
He goes, "No, I don't." And I go, and then he shows me on his phone like this.
Yeah.
And I go, "But you don't respond to direct messages." He goes, "Oh yeah, I know." So it's like, okay. And Jaron used to be notorious for not getting back to anyone. That's why you see Jaron spending time with call-in shows now, because there was too many people that couldn't reach him.
Okay.
When you get busy as a creator of any kind, you don't really have time to mingle if you're
Sure.
trying to edit and do things. And that's what happened to Jaron a long time ago. He spent a lot more time now online. And of course, if you get hours in online on YouTube, people might send you cash. So it's worth parking it on YouTube every day if you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is when you should plug your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen how the game is played. I don't know how I really whether or not I really want to do that. I've always said, as I said before, any monies that I get from this endeavor is going straight to the observatory and the outreach with it. But it you were asking me, I think, how would I do that? How would I go about it? And if from what I hear, from what the complaint I hear from you is that the flat Earth community is no longer a community. That basically it's fractured. There's nothing to hold on to, and there's nothing to really motivate people to get forward.
It's dead meat. It's been dead meat since COVID.
So, but now, I mean, what you're describing to me is that you have these creators like Jaron and maybe Witsit or what have you. They're not getting back to people. They're not connecting with people. That seems to be sort of antithetical to forming a movement. Is if you want to form a movement, you're going to have to actually have a community. These folks are going to have to actually, get back to people and to get people together.
A flat Earth movement's a waste of time. They don't have a political power. They're not the type of people that want to be in a group. That's why we need to expand outside and get near, let's say, people like Greenpeace, people that care about the Earth. There are other groups that care about wildlife and the Earth.
Yeah.
Our goal isn't to become political in a political party. And unfortunately, what's going to make Flat Earth popular is going to be a silly pop star or an athlete. So the next thing you know, it's going to be cool to be a flat earther. Well, and then it's even worse. We got to weed through everyone and find out why they're here. So it's a dead end. Attracting flat earthers for the sake of flat Earth doesn't do much. If it comes out tomorrow, it doesn't change their lives. So their question is, what difference does it make? Has some value.
Mm-hmm.
But we live in a world just like that book. Could you hold up that book again with that title? We live in a book, a culture of money and war, and the bureaucracy that makes things happen is somewhat out of our hands. Going back to after they parted out the world after World War II. I'm just hoping that generation's long dead, and that there is a new paradigm ahead that has some accountability, and that's maybe where he's heading with the word audit in terms of accountability. Hey, if they're doing what they say, what can we do?
Yeah.
You know, but at least now we've got 60 or 6,000, either 60 or 6,000 people willing to take on the next task. You know, it like SpaceX, if they're kicking the can down the road.
So, you said that there are people willing to I guess I still I'm going to have to wait to see on that, because this is recent. I think the stuff that he's posted is from the 13th, so this has been up for maybe a week, maybe two, something like that. So it's I don't know how much this has gotten around, how many people actually know of this. This time I'm trying to form an intelligent question.
Well, how is he taken out of the community anyway? David Weiss, over the past 3 or 4 years, has done a good job of trying to do his form of outreach to getting to different audiences.
Okay.
And that's vital. But mostly they just like us because we're laughable. We're a fun show.
Yeah.
And I swear we need to take advantage of that. It's all we got, is that people want to come and goof on us, and to find out, like you did, that I had anything to say about anything else or any knowledge on anything was kind of a surprise and fun. The idea that you could have learned something from us is actually beyond belief. That's beyond belief that we taught you something.
Yeah, I mean, astronomy is huge, and there are definitely things that I am not an expert in, and there are definitely events that have happened that I don't keep up with. So, yeah, getting pointed out that there is a distance issue with Polaris. That was fun. I did not know that, and that's I definitely have some papers now to read.
But that's hard to believe. That's hard to believe.
Well,
you think your morning Gazette might have covered that, as opposed to learning it from us.
Yeah. So do you think that? So what do flat earthers want? What is it that? You say that they don't want to become a political organization. What do they want? Do they want anything?
I don't think we can handle management. So that's why I don't think we want to get near. I don't think we can handle the management of other people.
Okay.
I think we can barely handle ourselves. But accountability, to put an end to war wouldn't be as complicated as it sounds. There would just have to be a call for it. Again, Eisenhower, if you get a chance to play his speech, absolutely warned us of what he found out in office.
Yeah.
Why he was put in office, as a front man, how little he could do about it. And no less than, I think, 10 months later, Kennedy appealed to the press to tell the press about it and how little power he had, he admitted. And he said that only through the media can the people march, or whatever, can the people do their job. And that, with the press being relatively purchased, he didn't get any traction. And he thought he was president. So he had his brother going after the other powers that be. So he's going after the CIA. His brother's going after the FBI. Those people are all blackmail artists who have everyone in control, even up to the Hollywood shit you hear about today with the Epstein this and the corruption there. It's all a big blackmail game. They get dirt on you and they at you. And in real world, if you think you're tough and you go, I don't care what you do to me, they tell you about your kids. They tell you about your parents.
Yeah.
And you realize, wow, these people mean what they're saying. So you take someone like a Joe Rogan that used to talk about not going to the moon. And one day they approached him. They said, look, you got 2 ways to go about this. You can have a happy career or we're shutting you down. And he goes, what's it take? He goes, just shut up about the moon. Go on with everything else. And he pretty much did. And that's all it took. And he's happy. They're happy. Maybe that's what happened with Alex Jones as well. When we say people get most of the way there and then compromised. I don't know, but if you get approached, it's not isn't really much you can do.
I don't know. I don't know about Alex Jones. Alex Jones, that's a whole new topic.
Yeah, I don't know about
it. But
either.
With Rogan, I don't know how much Rogan has been pushed back, because essentially a lot of people called for Rogan to be canceled after some of his COVID comments, and Spotify said no, and because he has a $10 million contract with them. He's the largest podcaster on Spotify. So I think Joe Rogan has a lot of power. But do you think folks like Geo, folks like what is it, Pierre? What is his name? Shane Pierre?
Yeah, Shane.
Shane. Do they essentially, what do they want? What do they want from all of this? Do they, I guess that's my point is, do they want to be, you seem to want to move forward with this to really get a lot of activism, things of that nature. Do they?
Can I ask a question? Sorry, just trying to pick a spot. Yeah. Obviously, I'm a globe side person, but generally, just so you know where I stand, where I am.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there is one flat Earth movement? Because to me, there seems to be like 50.
Yeah, and that's well. I mean, Dan kind of touched on that, and I'll let what Tim had asked was, is there one flat Earth movement, or is there like 50 of them? And yeah, that's kind of what I see, is that it's really a cult of personality. Is that you have Bev has his acolytes. You've got Oakley; he has his acolytes.
Not a flat Earth. Not a flat Earth.
And you have, and so with Shane, and I guess Shane has his Discord server, and by the way, just as a complete just right-handed tangent, you can't type out COVID or vaccine at the very least. If you type COVID or vaccine on his server, on Shane's server, it immediately gets deleted. But and they say because they've been shut down twice.
By a robot. There's nobody doing that. That's a robot doing that.
Yeah, because they don't want their server getting killed. Well, this morning I was on there, and then someone posted something about Holocaust denial, and I was like, you know what? May not have been COVID that got you killed or got your servers killed, but anyway, with Shane and with Geo, there does seem to be like a cult of personality, and again, I'm expressing my fear that Witsit may also just be a cult of personality, and they're not really in this for any what's the word I'm looking for, good goal or altruistic goal. They're just in it to get power for themselves, either through money or through followers or through what have you.
I want to imagine us going to England and finding that the pub that you went to last time you were there and the pub that I went to last time of there weren't in the same section of town, and they had different football teams, soccer teams.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to mine, and you mention the team, and next thing you know, they're looking to kick your ass because you mentioned the opposing team to them. Well, it's neighborly to them. They fight amongst themselves. We know nothing about it. We think, hey, it's all soccer. What's your problem? Would be our first reaction. Okay. How wrong would we be, right? So
because you called it football. Because it's called football, and they would have beat you up for that. All of
it. and so
that too, yeah.
Territorially, there's room for a pub in each town anyway. So there's enough people wandering about. In other words, it's not the shopkeeper's fault people are coming around and looking to spend time there. And their enthusiasm for what they have is their enthusiasm for what they have. For instance, I don't have an enthusiasm for Austin speaking about Christianity and the Bible. And when people expressed that to him a week ago, he came back and just did another video about it. He goes, "Oh yeah," that to him, he figures, well, I'll just do it anyway.
Wow.
But he separates it from flat Earth mostly, and
I'm almost afraid to know what he has to say about Christianity, to be honest with you.
But kindly, it's a different subject, and it gives him somewhere to go to another audience. So think about it that way. If people want to hear him, maybe different people want to hear him for different reasons and doing different things. This is different enough. Anything towards Christianity is different enough. Sitting on Discord for the past year isn't doing him anything financially. And he's been preparing things like this. He talks about, what he's doing while he's on Discord. And him and Jaron did put together a conference that wasn't physical, it was virtual. And they're trying to work on the word true earth instead of flat earth. So between people that are interested in not interested in flat earth have somewhere to go. Let's just put it that way. If they're not interested in flat earth, I don't blame them.
Where did I hear that recently? I was
I
talking
don't
to
know. It
someone.
sounds like a good plan to me.
What was that?
Oh, just saying, to me, it sounds like a good plan, because a lot of what I would call more truth seekers aren't, Gleason map type flat earthers.
They're not that
they're more
flat.
yeah. And obviously, I've got problems with Gleason map living in Australia. It doesn't represent my country at all. So there are others there that sort of say, yeah, we get that, and so, but we trying to find our own truth. I can accept that, So to me, to call it, true earth makes more sense than calling it flat earth.
So I'm sticking with the flat earth term because people seek me out as a flat earther to talk to me. I fought to be a flat earther. I can't run from it personally. It'd be stupid. And also the psychology where people think we're crazy is a psychology. We're out of the box. We're out of the norm. And a lot of people just want to know not what we think, but why we think and how we think. And thinking could be outlawed soon. Being out of the box may be deemed unquestionably disorderly.
You think so?
I'm afraid that our children could easily be incarcerated and medicated for thinking. Yes.
Okay, that's I know that there's a lot of issues with cancel culture or what have you at the moment, but I think there's a long way to go before we get to the Fahrenheit 451 kind of 1984 apocalyptic jailing people for thinking. Like, I don't see the connective tissue, is I guess what I'm saying.
You'd have to look at the negative campaign and censorship against flat earthers and how we're deemed, not by yourself at all, but we're deemed dangerous in society. And it's not for our flat earth beliefs, it's for our willingness to go against the grain. Really, we can get conspiratorial, and I don't appreciate that. And I don't appreciate the religiotards either, but I will admit the fascinating thing about flat earth is many people have gravitated towards it from the Bible, and many people have gravitated to the Bible through flat earth. I happen to be a shallow flat earther because I have not addressed the creator.
Is that a term? Shallow flat earther?
I just know that I'm not, I don't hold strong opinions on how we got here.
Okay. Yeah, because I watch, I subscribe to this gentleman by the name of Everett Anderson, who basically just mocks TikTok videos of flat earthers. I probably shouldn't. I find it funny, for better or for worse, for ugly. I find his videos funny, but they're almost all TikTok, almost exclusively TikTok, and almost all are Christians. At least part of their spiel is they bring in, the Creator, the Bible, what have you. And I've always wondered how big of a intersection there is between Christian fundamentalism and flat Earth. Because when I first got into this, when I first started, like I said, kind of in comment sections, and the people I was following were Oakley, Sleeping Warrior, who else was there back then? D Marble, all these other people. A few of them would bring religion into it, but not a whole lot of them, or at least not that I saw. But now it seems to have flipped completely around. Like almost everyone that I see on Toon's channel, all of them seem to want to bring in God to explain, if the earth wasn't if the earth wasn't flat, God wouldn't exist somehow. So
I think it's in terms of us being in a construct where if we're somewhere, who made that? It's that simple. If this isn't a virtual environment, then there should be properties that made it exist. The theory of the Big Bang is a bit wild, as everything coming from nothing and expanding into infinity, which is another wild concept. So nothing and infinity are pretty bold differences and vast, and we think, I just got to it. We think that they've diminished man's role of responsibility in our own development because it's inconsequential. You're just part of another jillion planets. There's probably people everywhere. You're nothing special. This isn't the center of all things. Okay. If it's proven this is the center of all things, then man suddenly becomes more meaningful, and people want that really bad. Yes. It's like, oh, God made us in his image.
But I only find...
What do you got there?
Go ahead, Tim.
But I only find that... I was going to say, I only find the people who say that sort of thing are Christian fundamentalists. I don't hear any scientists say, no, we're small and insignificant in the same context of, therefore we don't have any responsibility. But that's where I find it a bit hard. And I have a religious background, so it's not a case of me being an atheist and saying, this is one side. I'm actually not an atheist. And but I do find that the only people who seem to push this idea that, all the scientists are trying to make us seem small and insignificant is religious people, not the scientists themselves.
Yeah, I can almost
and
so.
And to honest with you, the biggest obstruction. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, and I don't have, my memory for quotes is really bad, but I've listened to folks like Neil deGrasse Tyson. I've listened to folks like was it Hutchinson? Who was the other? Hawkins. Dawkins, the biologist, the environmental biologist. Dawkins.
Yeah.
And
he's a fundamentalist atheist.
Yes, he's as I refer to him. All three of them are anti-theists. They're not atheists. They're anti-theists.
Yes.
They basically do not believe in God, and they don't think you should believe in God either. And so with those voices, I think the Christian fundamentalists or the folks on the flat Earth who seem to have this opinion of, we're insignificant, is because they're getting it from them. And I have to say, I can buy that. I don't have a quote of, say, Dawkins saying that people are insignificant because, we're just stuff or dust floating through space. But that is the impression he tends to give people. At least he's given it to me.
I can see where they get it from. I can see where they get it from. If you take it, to me, I took most of those comments are more about trying to illustrate how big the universe is, not trying to say how small we are in it. But I can understand how you could then transfer that into they're saying we're smaller than insignificant. But
Yeah.
But personally, I don't think that's what they're saying. But yes, they are anti-theists. And personally, my opinion is that you could believe in God and you can believe in pretty much any science that you want, as long as it you need to make that judgment call yourself. It's not something a scientist can tell you. Oh, you're ridiculous for believing in God. That's that's your call, not theirs.
Yeah.
You will find me avoiding the word believe, though, because believe is faith-based, and I don't find it to be scientific at all.
Yeah, that's why I don't mix my faith with my religion or with my science. Right? Really, I try very hard for one not to inform on the other. So
therefore, I don't believe in the flat Earth. I just think that I've measured large flat areas in a world that's messed up and with a lot of deceit and a lot of behind the scenes operation that's elusive at best and not productive.
But that's based on your observation as opposed to someone who's coming from a Bible side trying to argue that, because the Bible says there are four corners of the earth, so therefore the earth is a square, which I have heard.
Plus, I'm an American, so all we know is being American. We don't have a big worldview to begin with.
It's really hard because I can hear how I can see in the time, like I'm well over 50, right? So I can see in the time that I've been around where America was from our point of view, from outside of America, say 40 years ago, and where America is now. I can understand why there's a lot of confusion in America.
Yeah, I try to keep my Americanness, contained.
May I suggest?
And it's hard because there's 50 states and it's different everywhere. But yeah.
But America is lacking of culture, and one of the biggest cultural things we have is this thing with guns and money, capitalism. So we are a culture of money and war. And I've found that in general, globers, as we call them, glober culture is what you're born into. So if I was born somewhere else, I would naturally adapt that culture. So flat earthers found themselves in a globe culture. It's not easy to be a minority.
Well, it's funny. Funny you should say that because again, when I came into this, almost all of the sort of flat earthers that I encountered were British, and so it was only until later that I started seeing more and more American flat earthers coming into the mix. But I agree that and I certainly agree that we in the United States have a culture of guns, violence, and neo-Calvinism in terms of work ethic and capitalism and things of that nature. I will rebel against the idea that Americans have no culture. That I think that's easily seen that the people in the southern states have their own set of culture and values. People in the Midwest have their own sort of values. People in the Northwest have even different values. So I think culture is there. It's just not as.
I think you're talking about regional traditions and not much culture, really. I think the most thing that you and I share culturally would be TV commercials. Aren't you glad you used Dial? We remember that's a lot of what we share. In other words, movies, sports, a lot of superficial shit is what you and I would share, because it was pitched to us as being good stuff. Have you ever we all grew up with Disney, as Americans. I don't know if you remember watching it on Sunday night with your family.
Oh yeah.
and Wild World of Animals. You know, it was a
Mhm.
big moment.
We did that here too. So yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah. Disney on Sunday was the norm. Growing up.
That was the last time Americans, you know, it was the last time families were together.
Just like I just it strikes me as I actually kind of feel weird when I hear that something that I think of as essentially quintessential American is experienced by people outside of America, because I'm like, and are we imperialists? Like,
You were for a little while, but so was everyone else. So.
it's like I just kind of feel guilty that we're everywhere. I don't know, but
So something like Disney that was delivered to us as being pure family um, bonding, even in hindsight, the guy must have hated his mother because there's no strong female roles in Disney. And
yeah.
that's amazing to think that that could be a serious subliminal message, is that they're less than substantial in our lives. And at some point, the women's movement came about in the country in the 60s here. And then before you knew it, women weren't in the home anymore. There was no matriarch. And therefore, they didn't know to use vinegar to clean anymore. Now they're going to get a specific product. It used to be what? Vinegar, bleach, baking soda. There was like 4 products in the house to clean everything. And now you got 35 different things you buy because nobody remembers. You know, we send our kids to preschool and our parents to an old person's home, and we've cut off the generational learning. Even the
I think that's got more to do with capitalism. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I think that's I would go with that myself. It's if you have the option, if you have the opportunity to, you know, if you're a company and you're like, all right, I sell vinegar, okay, that's great. But what if I could sell 3 types of vinegar that are really not all that different from one another, but I can convince people that you need this particular vinegar to clean your table, this particular vinegar to clean your windows, and this particular vinegar to clean your granite stove tops, and those are the only vinegars that are going to work, then I think the company is going to go with the range that's going to get them more money. Trying to convince people that they need to buy products they don't actually need.
And it extends back to something you said before about money. I think that's been the main driver for the last 40 years, and I think that's where a lot of this has changed. Is about a company is a nameless beast, and it's about the money, not about its social contract. So yeah.
I'd love to change the word profit to prosperity. You know, I think the goal should be prosperity and not profit. And
in that sense, yeah.
That would be nice, but then you would have to, I think, radically change human nature for that to take hold in any really meaningful way.
That answers your question. Then, what would flat earthers want? To radically change human
nature.
Thank you. Yeah, you got the answer.
Well, all right, okay, fair enough. But but unfortunately, I keep going back to it. If the cult of personality is that, and that's the nature that you're going to have to change, is that there is a lot. And I'm not saying that flat Earth is the monopoly on this. That there is not a cult of personality on the globe side or what have you. But I definitely see it on the flat Earth, is that it's to me, it strikes me as these folks are out there, and it's not about the topic anymore. It's about, listen to me because I'm cool. Listen to me because I'm so much smarter than everybody else. And you need to give me money because I am so much smarter than everybody else. And I can make your arguments for you, I guess.
He's the only one doing that. He's the only one with enough depth to actually say stuff like that or ask for money. You know, the average flat earther's driven by their emotions more and their desire to reach towards the world.
Okay.
You know, and you'll find that the vast majority are very unselfish.
Of
Very,
flat earthers.
very unselfish. Very, very, very.
Okay.
No, maybe an argument. They want to win an argument. That's different. But they're not asking for something of anyone else. I find them to be very giving of themselves. And I'm pretty sure that's almost all the way across the board. I did forget Nathan Thompson and Nathan Oakley as being people that had made money. Other than that, it's Jaron and Weiss, David Weiss. So there's maybe 6 people in the world generating money of enough to live off of. That's not a lot. Not a lot of people grifting their way through this. Not really.
Okay.
Look, that's just been really good. I've got to head off. Unfortunately, it's getting dark, and I've got a few things to do before night falls. So, it's been really good. Enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully I might catch
appreciate
up
you
with
coming
another
on. Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
There you go.
Hey.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I sent Gio a direct message just in case he's interested in coming around. He has a tough time moderating. These Discord servers are interesting as they end up taking on the personality of the host.
How you guys have DMOC anywhere near you all is fucking amazing to me. The man is how should I put this? Toxic?
Can I tell you a secret?
Sure.
Prior to Discord, I spent time with him for a couple of years.
Really?
In a drunken crowd, in a pub crowd. So
that I can buy.
He's fucking hysterical.
But that I can buy too.
But when he moved to Discord, they didn't know him. And he changed his persona to someone that had something to say instead of just having fun. And he got traction there. And he's easy to fight with, and people were looking to fight. And that's become the DMOC that you know.
All right. Okay. Because, I you tell me that he likes to hang out likes to hang out in pubs, and he's fun at pubs. I can buy that because I've known people like that.
It was just a drinking environment where in the Poncho Pete days, it was a drinking environment, and it wasn't scientific. It was for fun. It was all for fun. He'd get off work late around midnight his time, maybe 1, and he'd pop on, and he'd be winding down, and he'd goof on everything, Mm-hmm. He just does it with a different style now. He has acquired some language that surprises me that he might know something, but normally he has a real weird knack of word salading and finding the subject again somehow.
Okay.
And it's funny to hear him make a point because he started just goofing on words. That style has changed when he came. He never went back when he came to Discord. He never went back to his old personality at all. And his personality was purely jovial and having a good time.
That ain't the DMOC I know or have seen. He's he's pretty fucking toxic. The only things you have to say are insults, and that's it. He doesn't really add anything to a conversation. So
no, but he got sought out by a couple of people. Maybe the Brits. You talked about the Brits, and sometimes I just think it's not part of our deal, and we should leave them alone. And other times I'm interested in the global economy and the global input. But the Brits think different than we do, and they like a style of argument more than discussion. It's like, are you using words? It's like, yes. And it's like,
oh, it's a nice Bevan impersonation.
You might speak in a sentence if you would. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, I would have if you hadn't interrupted me. Oh, I interrupted you, did I? And it's this semantic sort of challenging every inch of your wording, and the subject doesn't matter anymore. Then you'll find something else fantastic. If it's your show and you got 8 people on panel and you get one person of opposition, well, you just push them about from person to person to person. It shocked me to do that, to see it inverted on the other side. And there's a lot of inversion. We honestly, if I say you and I on opposing sides, we'll see things from the opposite position. It's very, very, what is that, subjective? Is that what they call that?
I mean, I can empathize with your point of view. I mean, I can at least have enough respect to see where you're coming from.
I mean, I can't stand that you accept the clickbait media and that, for space, but you think it's normal. It's a huge difference between us.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that I accept it so much. Obviously, I don't think they're deliberately lying to us. My problem with the clickbaity crap is that they don't get the science right, or they're trying to sensationalize something that really isn't all that sensational. My biggest problem, like my kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of in a trivial way. There was a whole lot of hay being made of the Great Green Comet. I'm like, really? I've looked at it, and it's not that impressive. Most comets that come close to the Earth really aren't that great to look at. So I don't know why it was getting so much hype, but it certainly drove a lot of people to our observatory. So I can't complain, really. And the fact that it was green, assuming you had a very good camera to see it, was kind of cool. But
why was it so brief? Why was it only so briefly around?
Oh no, it's still around. It's still around till February, but it is a long period comet, which is a really bad term, but it's in a very eccentric orbit. And so what that means is that its orbit, so if you have the sun here, it swings by the sun fairly close and then goes way out and then comes back in. And what that means is that it spends a whole lot of its time, because what Kepler tells us is that an object that's way far away from the sun is going to travel far more slowly than when it's close to the sun. So it literally is zipping by the sun, and then the rest of its 56,000 year period, it's mostly going to be out in the tail ends of space, of the solar system. So
it seems like every time something comes near Earth, they go, "We didn't know it was coming." That's sort of disappointing.
Well, that's actually a concern that I don't know if folks are not if NASA is not making that more of a concern to prevent panic, but one of the things that NASA is trying to do is, if you look up Pan-STARRS is a satellite, or is a telescope system in Mauna Kea, whose sole job is to look for near-Earth asteroids that are very close to us that could potentially slam into us and kill everybody on the planet. The problem is near-Earth asteroids as a group tend to be very dark and very small, so they make them very, very hard to find. So when you hear oh, we didn't see this comet coming, or we didn't see this asteroid before, it's because they're very, very difficult to find, and there's not a lot of current resources being thrown at trying to find them.
So that's interesting. When they talk about an object coming between us and the moon, it seems pretty damn close.
Oh yeah, and it is.
Do you think we're under any potential threat from the sky in let's say our lifetime, yours and my lifetime?
It's hard to say at this point. You're talking about statistics, and so, for instance, as I like to joke around with people, the star Betelgeuse and Orion can supernova anytime between now and 100,000 years from now. What I can tell you is that from a statistical analysis, a world-ending extinction-level event collision happens every 6,500 million years, depending on who you talk to. So by that, we're due. By that, we are kind of due for something to come by and smack into us and basically annihilate most all life on the planet. then it actually kind of gets worse, because as you look at asteroids or impactors that could really, mess up a continent, then yeah, we are in fact due for one of those. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know really. Is it something we should be worried about? Absolutely. But on the other hand, there's really not much we can do about it. So I don't know what to.
Sometimes I think that the people in charge know that there's no future. That's why they don't care for the Earth. Let's just say GE, for instance, their nuclear practices, large company like that.
So I think it's far simpler than that. I think it's not that I don't think they care about the future. That's not part of their bottom line. The bottom line is instant gratification. Is how much money can I get now? Screw the future. I don't want to have any kind of far-sighted plan as to the ramifications of what I'm doing now, so long as now gives me money.
Well, I was trying to think why they wouldn't care. And I thought, well, what if they know we get wiped out? And I started to think about pole shifts and the zodiac cycle being a 26,000 year cycle. And I go, wow, halfway through that would be 13,000 years. So I type in the words 13,000 years ago, boom, Younger Dryas event, giant flood, just like the Bible says. And I went, whoa, how insightful am I? Could there just be a simple flip-flop magnetically halfway through the cycle? The answer is sure.
Well, I mean, if the 26,000 year period that you're talking about is the precession of the Earth. So that's basically the motion of the. So right now, the Polaris is essentially the North Star. In a few hundred years, we will definitively notice that it's not anymore. In 26,000 years later, it will, process around the sky until finally Polaris becomes the North Star again.
So it's just a little wobble, like they say. It's not a big flip.
Yeah, it's a. I don't know about calling it a little wobble, but it is a wobble. It's a very slow wobble, and it doesn't have anything to do with the magnetic field of the Earth.
Why did they try and add Ophiuchus back, or the
Ophiuchus? Oh yes, Ophiuchus.
Why? Where did that come from? Right,
so,
talking about something out of nowhere.
So that becomes all right. So
I don't want to get into astrology. I agree. I don't mean that.
No. I can see how someone could be conspiratorially minded. Basically, I'm having an internal argument between me and an astrologer. Is that technically speaking, a zodiacal sign is a sign through which the sun passes through. So if the sun passes through Cancer, Cancer is a zodiacal sign. Now, the iffy part of it is, what do you define as the boundaries of a constellation? So apparently the early astrologers thought that the boundaries only encompassed those 12. But astronomers came later and actually codified it because we want to essentially use constellations as states or provinces. We want to be able to say it's in this. When we say that something is in the constellation of Orion, we know a specifically mapped out section of space that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And so when whoever did that, they mapped out Ophiuchus such that it dips into the path of the sun. So depending on how you define it, then the sun actually passes through the constellation of Ophiuchus. And so there are actually 13 zodiacal signs to astronomers, whereas there are only 12 to astrologers. And then the precession causes things to get even more wonky. In reality, the sun was in the constellation of Pisces when I was born, not the constellation of Aries when I was born. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
See,
your astrological sign, as it's stated in the paper, is probably wrong.
Probably affecting tattoo artists more than anything else.
Well, no, actually, it's funny you should say that because I actually have Aries tattooed on my arm. So, and I had it tattooed after I knew about the fact that I was actually a Pisces. I just think Aries are cooler. So,
That's funny.
But yeah, I don't know where that came from, but
Well, we should go before we drag it on. You know, unless
Yes.
you have something else you want to talk about. I like it when you and I are fresh. Otherwise, you know, we get too personal.
No. I get it. I get it. And yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I probably should go get something to eat, maybe. For some reason, I'm now on a nocturnal schedule. I will just put this back up for those of you who, I think Cygnus, you're the only one actually watching anymore. Or at least you're the only one commenting. So yes, to end this stream, I'm talking here with Dan the Waterman. We were discussing this new endeavor by Austin Whitsitt, NASA audits, which apparently is advocating holding NASA accountable. Oh, I know you're watching. I know you're watching, guys. Holding NASA accountable. It has a blog for people. You can contact them. It says that eventually you can purchase classes that allow you to purchase classes to figure out how to audit NASA. And by audit, I mean contact them, interview them, so forth and so on. So you can buy classes to learn how to do that. In 6 days, you can buy merch. I'm glad that there's a countdown because I don't know how I would live my life without knowing exactly to the second when I could buy NASA audits merch. You can join their mailing list, and something that I might just do for the fun, for shits and giggles, I may actually apply to become a part of the NASA audits team, although I will redact my personal information in my CV. So I will only provide what I've already provided out there, which is my name and my email address. So and we will see what we see on that. But so that's what we were talking about. Dan, last things you want to say?
Yeah, I'd hope for transparency on this and any ventures that people get into. Thank goodness we got rid of FE Core, who had an incredibly deep transparency problem from day one, and it caused a lot of dissension amongst us that could have been cleared up if we known it was over with. They're the only ones that put together a 501c3, and with access to monies caused all the issues that you might expect from there as to who gets to allot it in what position. And they started to look to get reimbursed for time spent on projects and putting price tags on objects that were time-based and not material-based.
Mm-hmm.
So if I tinkered with stuff and asked to get paid for it, that's probably not cool. So I'm going to thumbs up to Austin right now as an activist. The other thing that I would be interested in is something I really am doing with you is speaking to more people who teach.
Okay.
And find, and that I think that's super valuable. That is super valuable for both. Look, it's working both ways for you and I. So of course it's valuable. Talking to ourselves isn't very valuable. We were so excited to meet each other and hug each other till we found out, sort of like the religious people, there isn't one type of Christian, and there isn't one type of flat earther.
Yeah.
Oh, and unfortunately, when you get me, you're not getting, you're only getting a small slice. And same thing with the Brits. You only got a small slice. And good job for you for still being interested and still finding a way to apply it to your job and your life.
Yeah. It definitely is giving me sort of fuel. I'm trying to take the things that I encounter on in my conversations with Flat Earth and turn them into essentially teaching moments. Like it has most recent encounters have really motivated me to do a series on the cosmic distance ladder. How do astronomers actually determine the distances to celestial objects, and why you should trust us? So
I think it's going to be different talking to Austin Whitsitt than it will be talking to Geo. I think you'll appreciate Geo more and get more life out of that. Where Austin's going to look to set you straight, and you're looking to set him straight. You and Geo won't go through that.
No. I mean, like I said, well, you know that I've had a fairly lengthy conversation with Gio, and I have had a small conversation with Witsit, where he frequently tried to tell me things about astronomy that were wrong. Basically, he was trying to mansplain astronomy to me, and I had to correct him on that. And so, but I hear what you're saying. With Austin, it's going to be a little bit more, hopefully not contentious, but it is definitely going to be
it's a good word.
Conversation. Assuming I even have a conversation with the man.
I hope you have more than one. I really do, and I hope that you stick around through our emotional side, which is never very pretty. You don't know my reputation at all. I'm a yeller and a screamer. I just don't do it with you.
Well, I saw right before I got into that conversation with Gio, you were really riled up about with
Bob, the lying guy. Bob, the science guy.
No, it wasn't Bob. It was Zanuck.
Yeah, he's a time waster. Yeah.
What is it, Zanuck? Okay, yeah.
But it was Bob that got me wound up. Bob wouldn't accept any of my heights, any of my distances, and it was the Salton Sea. Everyone's worked at the Salton Sea. Okay. And he was pounding me for elevations, and he was nitpicking me to death because he was using style against me. Yeah. So.
I have interacted with Bob a little bit, and he branched out, or he reached out to see if he wanted to do a collab with me, which I would very much like to do. So hopefully
I don't trust him or like him, but he wants to be in your bracket. So
well, he's got a real nice personal telescope setup. His observatory is pretty fun.
Oh, good.
I do have to say that.
Well, I'm glad you're both there, though, because you're both actually accessible, and we don't have that option very much. We're not really welcome to stroll in to labs, of any kind.
Well, I can try to put people in contact with others. I cannot guarantee.
Keep your ears open. I'm just saying, if anyone wants to talk to us, particularly in fields of optics or different fields, even if they want to pick on us, we get value out of it. I find that when academia speaks, they show their limitations because they're usually quite narrow in what they know because they teach what they teach.
Yeah.
You're very unusual in your quickness to admit what you don't know.
Oh, that yes.
Most people do not do that, Rob. Most people don't do that. Thank you for being a human being because not everyone's got time for that, to be a human being. Yeah. It's very, very nice of you to do that.
Appreciate that.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for coming on. And so I'll see you later, and I'm just going to close up this shot. All right, folks. Thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate you spending your Friday evenings with me, Friday mornings, or whatever time it may be, to paraphrase a certain gentleman from Westchester County. Tomorrow at some point I will be giving yet another live lecture. I don't know when, but I will be giving yet another live lecture on the moon. Specifically, I will be talking about how the gravitational attraction between the Earth and the moon causes things like tides, causes the moon to become synchronously locked, and how that is ultimately going to affect the Earth and what the Earth-Moon system is ultimately going to look like, assuming it doesn't get fried by the sun. And I might, if I have time, put eclipses in there. If I don't have time, then I'll make a third one of eclipses. And my normal spiel, if you like this sort of content, if you like the conversations that I have, please like, share, and subscribe. My content is either astronomy education or conversations like I had with Dan talking about flat Earth beliefs, or flat Earth beliefs, the flat Earth community, that sort of thing. Or I guess now the true Earth community, as it's maybe coming to be known. So if you like that sort of thing, like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to help me in my outreach, one of my career goals is to truly open up the public outreach here at George Mason, particularly to go out and provide astronomy resources to those communities that, for whatever reason, cannot provide those resources for themselves. So if you want to support me, please, at this point, consider becoming one of my Patreons. One of the benefits is you get to name my firstborn child, assuming that my partner at the time agrees. But also there are really useful ones, like depending on the level, I would be more than happy to get with you to talk about a research program, how you would actually do observations to show some kind of astrophysical concept. So yeah. End of pitch. All right, guys. Peace out, clear skies, and I'll see you on the next one.